My parents forced me to attend my entitled brother's engagement, threatening my allowance, unaware I was richer than them. The email arrives like a summons from the royal court, formal, demanding, and utterly dismissive of whatever I might have planned. Lindsay, darling, Brad is getting engaged. Party at the Westlake Country Club, Saturday the 24th. Wear something presentable, please. And confirm you're coming by Wednesday. You know how your brother gets when you're not there to support him. I stare at my mother's message, fingers hovering over my keyboard as I calculate exactly how many seconds I can delay my response before triggering a follow-up call. The morning sun streams through my apartment windows, illuminating my dual monitor setup where stock charts and investment portfolios create a colorful mosaic across the screens. My coffee grows cold beside me as I read the email a second time, catching the familiar notes of assumption and subtle disapproval. The "where something presentable" comment stings with particular precision, a reminder that, in my parents' eyes, I'm still the awkward, underachieving daughter who never quite learned to shine in public. My phone buzzes. Too late. Lindsay? It's Mom. Did you get my email about Brad's engagement party? I minimize my trading platform, displaying a 12% gain on my latest biotech investment, and prepare my voice for the role I've been playing for years.
Hi, Mom.
Yes, just saw it. Congratulations to Brad, I say, making sure to sound just a little tired, a little overwhelmed, the struggling freelancer they believe me to be. Well, aren't you excited for him? Rachel is from the Palmers, you know. Her father owns half the real estate downtown. The inflection in her voice suggests I should be impressed. Your brother's finally hit the jackpot, professionally and personally. I bite back the urge to point out that Brad's professional success consists of 3 failed startups and a current venture hemorrhaging money at a rate that would horrify her if she knew. But she doesn't know. Nobody does. That's great, Mom. I'm happy for him. Are you coming to the party? Your father and I expect you there. Brad specifically asked about you. I doubt that very much. The last time I saw my brother, he spent 15 minutes explaining why my finance degree was basically useless in today's economy, then offered to let me handle his company's social media for experience. I'll be there, I say, because it's easier than the alternative. But Mom, about the monthly allowance. Oh, Lindsay, not this again.
We've talked about this.
Until you find a proper job with benefits, the allowance stays. What kind of parents would we be if we let our daughter struggle? The irony is almost painful. The allowance, $800 a month that I haven't touched in 4 years, sits in a separate account, accumulating interest. I keep accepting it because rejecting it would require explanations I'm not ready to give. Thank you, I say instead, the words bitter on my tongue. Of course, darling. Now, Brad mentioned his company might have a position opening up. Something in administration. Wouldn't that be perfect? Steady income, you could finally move to a better neighborhood. I look around my spacious penthouse apartment with its floor-to-ceiling windows overlooking the city skyline. The struggling freelancer facade requires maintaining a modest address on paper, a small studio apartment I rent but never use, where my parents' mail is forwarded and where I meet them on the rare occasions they visit. I'll think about it. I promise, knowing I never will. After we hang up, I return to my algorithms and trading platforms. This is my world now. Analytics, market predictions, calculated risks. I started small during college, turning a $5,000 scholarship refund into $15,000 through careful stock picks. By graduation, when Brad was receiving a BMW as a gift for completing his education journey, I had quietly amassed $120,000. While my parents funded Brad's first disastrous venture into artisanal beard oils, I was diversifying my portfolio and learning the art of angel investing. When they bought him a condo to help him focus on his business, I was closing my first 7-figure deal. Now, 5 years after college, my net worth sits comfortably in the 8-figure range. Maddox Holdings, my LLC named after my maternal grandmother, the only family member who ever believed in me, manages investments across tech, biotech, and sustainable energy. I live comfortably, but modestly by the standards of my wealth. My biggest extravagances are my home, a collection of rare first edition books, and anonymous donations to educational charities. And no one in my family has the slightest idea. Sometimes I wonder why I maintain the charade. It would be so satisfying to arrive at Thanksgiving in a Bentley, to casually mention my latest acquisition over Christmas dinner, to watch their faces as they realize how drastically they've misjudged me. But there's a certain power in being underestimated, a freedom that comes with lowered expectations. Besides, the truth would shatter the family dynamic forever. My success would be diminished. You were just lucky, appropriated, we always knew you had potential, or worse, turned into an expectation to bail out Brad's failing enterprises or fund my parents' increasingly lavish retirement plans. So I've kept my silence. Until now. Because 6 months ago, a pitch deck landed in my inbox from a startup called Next Trend Technologies. The business model was solid but unrefined, the market research impressive, but the leadership questionable. It took me half a page to recognize my brother's company. He'd changed the name again, but his writing style and overly ambitious projections were unmistakable. I almost deleted it immediately. Then curiosity took hold. How had he found me? Did he know? But the email was addressed to L. Maddox Holdings, not to me personally. Brad had no idea who ran the company he was soliciting funds from. That night, I stayed up until 3 a.m. reviewing his proposal. Stripped of my personal feelings, the core business had potential. With proper management and realistic scaling, it could be profitable within 2 years. The product, a targeted marketing algorithm for small businesses, was actually innovative, though I suspected it came from his more talented team rather than Brad himself. When morning came, I made the decision that would change everything. I would invest in Next Trend anonymously, strategically, and with ironclad conditions that would give me significant control. If Brad mismanaged this opportunity like all the others, I'd have the power to intervene before he crashed and burned. What I didn't anticipate was how quickly he would start to falter, or how deeply satisfying it would feel to quietly steer his company from the shadows. Or that 6 months later, his engagement party would present the perfect opportunity to finally step into the light. As I close my mother's email and return to my work, I allow myself a small, private smile. The family chains that have always held me back are about to become the very links that pull me forward into a truth they're not prepared to face. Let them think I'm struggling. Let them believe I need their allowance, their pity, their job offers.
For now.
The Westlake Country Club gleams with excessive opulence as I step through its grand entrance. Crystal chandeliers cascade from vaulted ceilings, champagne fountains bubble at every corner, and ice sculptures shaped like intertwined hearts slowly melt onto silver platters. It's exactly the kind of over-the-top display Brad has always mistaken for taste. Lindsay, you actually came. My mother swoops in, air-kissing both cheeks, while her eyes perform a rapid assessment of my appearance. I've chosen a simple black dress, expensive but understated, and minimal jewelry. Not flashy enough to draw attention, but far from the presentable she requested. Wouldn't miss it, I reply, accepting a flute of champagne from a passing server. Brad's making his rounds with Rachel. You'll just love her. Perfect manners, excellent family connections. She's exactly what your brother needs to really establish himself. She lowers her voice. Her trust fund alone could set them up for life, though of course Brad won't need to touch it now that his company's taking off. I smile politely, wondering if my mother has any idea that her Golden Sons company had been 72 hours from bankruptcy before my investment pulled it back from the brink. I heard he found an investor.
Yes.
Some investment firm swooped in right when they were about to hit the big time. Brad says they recognized his vision when no one else could see it. She beams with maternal pride. Your father's so proud. He always knew Brad had that special something. Across the room, my father is slapping backs and roaring with laughter, every inch the successful patriarch showing off his successor. Brad stands at the center of an attentive circle, gesturing animatedly as he no doubt regales them with exaggerated tales of his business acumen. And that must be Rachel? I ask, nodding toward a slender woman in cream silk who stands slightly apart from Brad's circle, smiling politely but looking somewhat detached. Yes, go introduce yourself. She should meet the whole family. I make my way across the room, intercepted every few steps by distant relatives and family friends who invariably ask if I'm still doing that freelance thing with thinly veiled concern. By the time I reach Rachel, I've perfected my practiced smile of humble resignation. You must be Lindsay, she says before I can introduce myself. Brad's sister. Guilty as charged, I respond, noting the intelligent assessment in her eyes. She's not what I expected. There's a sharpness there, a self-possession that seems at odds with someone willing to marry my brother. He doesn't talk about you much, she says frankly. I'm not surprised. I'm the family disappointment. The words escape before I can censor them, but Rachel's mouth quirks up at one corner. Somehow I doubt that's true, she replies, her voice lowered as she sips her champagne. Family narratives can be deceiving. Before I can respond, Brad's booming voice cuts through our conversation. Well, if it isn't my little sister, finally emerged from whatever coffee shop you've been hiding in. He descends upon us, champagne sloshing dangerously in his glass as he throws an arm around my shoulders. His cologne is expensive and overpowering, his designer suit just a touch too tight across the shoulders. Congratulations, Brad. I manage, extricating myself from his embrace. Your company and now an engagement. You must be thrilled. Living the dream, sis. He winks, then turns to a nearby group. Hey, did I tell you guys about the angel investor who begged to get in on next trend? Practically threw money at us. I suppress a smile, remembering the detailed term sheet and the stringent performance metrics I'd required before transferring a single dollar to his company. Angel investor? Asks a silver-haired man I recognize as one of my father's golfing buddies. Who backed you? Some LLC called L. Maddox Holdings, Brad says dismissively. They're lucky they got in when they did. Our latest projections show we'll triple our valuation by quarter's end. This is news to me, and as the majority shareholder who receives the actual financial reports, I know it's completely fabricated. Next trend is improving under my guidance, but nowhere near such performance. Sounds impressive, I murmur, as Rachel shoots me a glance that suggests she knows better. Oh, it is, Brad continues, oblivious to any skepticism. In fact, he reaches into his jacket pocket and pulls out a glossy business card. If you're tired of scraping by on whatever it is you do, we might have an opening in our admin department. Nothing fancy, but it's a foot in the door. He presses the card into my hand, his expression a nauseating mix of condescension and pity. How thoughtful, I say, pocketing the card while mentally calculating how many shares of his company I could buy with what I earned in passive income last month alone. Rachel touches my arm lightly. Your brother's enthusiasm sometimes runs ahead of reality, she says quietly, as Brad is drawn away by my father announcing a toast. You don't say, I reply, a genuine smile finally breaking through. As everyone raises their glasses to the happy couple, I observe Brad basking in the adulation, my parents glowing with pride, and Rachel watching it all with a calculating gaze that makes me wonder how much she truly knows. 3 board meetings I've attended remotely as L. Maddox Holdings. 3 times I've voted down Brad's reckless expansion plans and insisted on sustainable growth strategies. 3 times he's complained bitterly about his overcautious investor without having the slightest idea who's really pulling the strings. The champagne tastes sweeter as I contemplate just how dramatically this room would change if they knew the truth. Not yet, but soon. The curtain is about to rise on the real show, and for once, I won't be watching from the wings. 6 months earlier, rain lashed against my office windows as I stared at the pitch deck on my screen. Next Trend Technologies, formerly Brad Tech Solutions, formerly Maddox Innovations. My brother's 3rd attempt at entrepreneurial glory stared back at me, his familiar overpromises wrapped in sleek graphics and ambitious projections. What are the odds? I murmured, scrolling through the business proposal that had somehow found its way to my investment firm. A quick search confirmed Brad had no idea who owned L. Maddox Holdings. He'd sent his pitch to 20 potential investors, finding my company through a tech investment forum where I maintained an anonymous profile. I should have deleted it immediately. Family and business don't mix. A lesson I'd learned watching my parents pour money into Brad's previous failures. But something made me keep reading. Behind the hyperbole and unrealistic timelines lurked a genuinely promising idea. The algorithm that formed NextTrend's core product showed real innovation, the kind that suggested Brad had finally hired someone with actual talent. The market need was legitimate, the technical specifications sound. My assistant, Maya, knocked and entered with fresh coffee. "You've been staring at that one for hours. Interesting prospect." "Complicated," I replied, accepting the mug. Maya was the only person who knew my real identity, vetted thoroughly, paid exceptionally well, and bound by ironclad NDAs. The company has potential, but the leadership is questionable. She glanced at the screen. Next trend? Wasn't that in last month's Startups to Watch list? Was it? I pulled up the article. Indeed, there was Brad, photographed in front of a whiteboard covered in meaningless flowcharts, captioned as a visionary disruptor. The puff piece mentioned they were seeking series of funding after burning through their seed money. No surprise there. I dug deeper. Financial records showed NextTrend had 3 months of runway left, maximum. Their burn rate was unsustainable, with excessive spending on lavish office space and team-building retreats to Aspen. Brad had given himself a CEO salary more appropriate for an established company than a struggling startup. Yet buried beneath the mismanagement were promising user metrics from their beta test. The product worked. The initial clients were satisfied. The technical team, led by someone named Aiden Chin, demonstrated genuine innovation. "They're going to crash," I told Maya, but not because the idea is bad, because the founder is running it into the ground. "So you'll pass." I leaned back in my chair, an idea forming, reckless, complicated, but oddly appealing. What if I didn't? What if Maddox Holdings became their primary investor, with conditions? Maya raised an eyebrow. "You'd invest in your brother's company? The brother who thinks you're barely staying afloat financially? With the right terms, I could protect the investment and potentially save something promising." I was already drafting the offer in my mind. Significant equity stake, board representation, expenditure oversight, performance metrics. "He'd essentially lose control while thinking he's been saved," Maya observed. "He has no business being in control," I replied, remembering the beard oil venture that had somehow burned through $200,000 of my parents' money in 6 months. But unlike our parents, I won't just hand him cash and hope for the best. The next morning, I set my terms through a law firm that handled Maddox Holdings investments. The offer was deliberately designed to appear as a lifeline with strings attached: 40% equity, a board seat with veto power over major expenditures, quarterly performance reviews, and a restructured salary schedule for executive leadership. Brad counteroffered once, weekly. I declined any modifications. 3 days later, with his company's accounts nearly empty, he signed. I dialed into my first board meeting as a silent observer, listening while Brad introduced our Savior Investors representative to the team. I kept my camera off, using a voice modulator to disguise myself during the brief moments I spoke. Maddox Holdings believes in NextTrend's core technology, I told them. But our investment comes with accountability. Effective immediately, all expenditures over $10,000 require board approval. Executive salaries are reduced by 30% until profitability. The Aspen team retreat is canceled. But team morale, Brad began to protest, will improve with job security. I interrupted. Your runway was down to weeks. Your employees know that, even if you don't acknowledge it. Over the following months, I watched Brad chafe under the new restrictions. He complained bitterly about the bean counters cramping his visionary style, even as the company's finances stabilized. Without his frivolous spending, NextTrend began to show promising metrics. The product improved under Aiden Chen's leadership, customer acquisition costs decreased, and user retention climbed. I maintained my anonymity through 5 executive sessions, 12 product development meetings, and countless email exchanges. Each time Brad proposed an unnecessary expense, I declined it. When he suggested diluting the technical team's equity to create more for himself, I blocked it. When he tried to hire his college roommate as a culture consultant, I vetoed it. He hated Maddox Holdings with a passion he expressed loudly to anyone who would listen, while I continued transferring my parents' monthly allowance into a high-yield savings account, showing up for obligatory family dinners, and listening to stories of Brad's business genius. Now, watching him hold court at his engagement party, I consider the documents in my purse. Board certifications, voting records, financial statements, evidence of every inflated projection he's presented versus the actual numbers. Tonight, NextTrend's anonymous investor steps out of the shadows. Tonight, the power dynamic that has defined my family for decades undergoes a seismic shift. I check my watch. 2 hours until Brad's speech, when he'll undoubtedly thank his mysterious investor without knowing she's been in the room all along. I escape to the country club's terrace, seeking a moment of quiet before Brad's speech. The evening air carries the scent of jasmine from the manicured gardens below, a pleasant contrast to the suffocating perfumes and aftershaves mingling inside. My champagne glass dangles between my fingers, still half full from an hour ago. Not much of a drinker? I turn to find Rachel standing in the doorway, silhouetted against the golden light from inside. Without the forced smile she's worn all evening, she looks more authentic and more troubled. Just pacing myself, I reply. Big nights like this, I like to keep my wits about me. She steps onto the terrace, the door swinging closed behind her, muffling the sounds of the party. Smart. I should have done the same. She holds up her own glass, noticeably emptier than mine. Liquid courage. For your engagement party? That doesn't sound promising. The words slip out before I can filter them, but Rachel doesn't take offense. Instead, she laughs, a genuine sound that transforms her face. You're nothing like what Brad described. Let me guess. I lean against the stone balustrade. Pathetic? Directionless? A cautionary tale about wasted potential. Something like that. She joins me at the railing, looking out over the darkened golf course. He said you were the family charity case. The description stings despite everything, but I maintain my composure. And what do you think, now that we've met? Rachel studies me with that same shrewd assessment I noticed earlier. I think you're playing a long game that no one else understands. She pauses, lowering her voice, including my fiancé. A warning bell sounds in my mind. What makes you say that? I'm good with people. It's why I went into corporate psychology. She turns, fully facing me now. The person I've observed tonight doesn't match the narrative I've been fed. You carry yourself with too much confidence for someone who's supposedly struggling. You watch everything, miss nothing. And you have a peculiar little smile when Brad talks about NextTrend. My pulse quickens. You're very observant. It's my job. She hesitates, then adds, just like reviewing investment contracts became part of mine when Brad asked me to look over the paperwork from Maddox Holdings. Time seems to stop. You've seen the investment agreement? Brad showed it to me after he signed. He was complaining about the restrictions. She sips her champagne. He didn't actually read it before signing, just skimmed for the dollar amount. I, however, read every word. And I keep my voice neutral, though my knuckles have whitened around my glass. And I found it fascinating that a supposedly hard-nosed investment firm insisted on such specific restrictions, almost as if they knew Brad's particular weaknesses. She tilts her head, the investor representative who dials into meetings with a voice modulator. The LLC named after the Maddox family matriarch. The contract clause that gives them control over Brad's salary. Sounds like standard investor protection, I say carefully. Perhaps. She sets her glass down on the balustrade. 2 weeks ago, I was working late at NextTrend's office. Brad had forgotten his laptop, so I logged in to retrieve a file he needed. A notification popped up, an email from Maddox Holdings that he hadn't opened yet. My stomach tightens. I remember the email, a firmly worded rejection of Brad's proposal to lease a corporate yacht. The wording was familiar. Rachel continues. The same precise, slightly formal structure I recognized from somewhere else. It took me a day to place it. Oh, my face remains neutral, but my mind races. Your holiday card to your parents last year. Brad showed it to me, laughing about how you always write like you're composing a business letter. Her eyes hold mine. Same writing style. Same voice. The silence between us stretches. In the distance, a clock chimes the half hour. Brad's speech looms 30 minutes away. What exactly are you suggesting, Rachel? I finally ask. I'm not suggesting anything. I'm telling you that I know. She leans closer. You're L. Maddox Holdings. You're the investor who saved Next Trend when it was circling the drain. Relief and apprehension wash over me simultaneously. And if I were, then I'd wonder why you've kept it a secret, and what you plan to do tonight, carrying that folder in your purse that you keep checking. Her gaze is direct, unflinching, and whether Brad has any idea what's coming. He doesn't.
Good.
The edge in her voice surprises me. He needs a wake-up call. This isn't the reaction I expected. You're not defending him? Rachel sighs, running a finger around the rim of her glass. I love Brad, but I'm not blind to who he is. I've watched him take credit for Aiden's work, spend money the company doesn't have, and treat his employees like disposable assets. I've tried to guide him toward better decisions, but she shrugs. He only listens to power, and right now that's you. You don't seem upset about that. I'm marrying Brad, not his ego. She straightens, smoothing her dress. But before whatever you have planned happens, I need to know, are you trying to destroy him or save him from himself? The question gives me pause. When I'd first invested, revenge had certainly been part of my motivation. But over months of watching the company's potential being squandered by my brother's poor leadership, something had shifted. I want the company to succeed, I answer honestly. And I want Brad to understand he's not the business genius he thinks he is. Whether that destroys or saves him depends entirely on him. Rachel nods, seemingly satisfied. Then we want the same thing. She extends her hand. Partners? As I shake her hand, the terrace door swings open. My father emerges, beaming with pride and slightly flushed from whiskey. There you are, girls. Brad's about to give his speech. The man of the hour wants his family front and center. Rachel and I exchange a final look of silent understanding before following him inside. The crowd has gathered around a small stage where Brad adjusts the microphone, his million-dollar smile dazzling the assembled guests. My mother catches my arm as I pass. Stand up straight, Lindsay, and smile. These are Brad's future in-laws. I smile, broader and more genuine than she's seen in years. Because in 20 minutes, everything changes. The room falls silent as Brad taps the microphone, his smile dazzling under the chandeliers. He looks every inch the successful entrepreneur in his custom tuxedo, gold cufflinks catching the light as he gestures expansively. Friends, family, future in-laws, he begins, his voice carrying that practiced charisma he's perfected since high school debate club. Thank you all for coming to celebrate not just my engagement to the beautiful Rachel, but what I consider my dual success story. I stand between my beaming parents, feeling Rachel's knowing presence a few feet away. My folder rests against my ribs inside my jacket, each document a bullet in the chamber. As many of you know, this past year has been transformative for me, both personally and professionally. Brad raises his champagne flute. Next Trend Technologies has revolutionized small business marketing with our proprietary algorithm. We've grown from a scrappy startup to an industry disruptor with over 40 employees and a valuation that, he winks conspiratorially, I'm not allowed to disclose publicly yet, but let's just say my future father-in-law is impressed. Polite laughter ripples through the crowd. I notice Aiden Chen, Next Trend's actual technical genius, standing uncomfortably in the corner, clearly unused to such social gatherings. Brad had mentioned bringing a few key team members almost as an afterthought. Of course, every success story has its challenges, Brad continues. 6 months ago, Next Trend faced a critical moment. We needed capital to scale, and fast. That's when Maddox Holdings recognized our potential and stepped in. My mother squeezes my arm. Isn't your brother amazing? She whispers, always landing on his feet. He certainly has a gift, I murmur, as Brad launches into an elaborate metaphor comparing entrepreneurship to mountain climbing, complete with references to oxygen-thin funding environments and scaling the peak of market domination. I want to take a moment to thank my mysterious benefactor, Brad says, raising his glass higher. Whoever you are at Maddox Holdings, you drove a hard bargain, but you believed in my vision when it counted most. The irony is almost painful. I step slightly away from my parents, my heart pounding as Brad winds down his speech. And finally, to my incredible parents who always supported my dreams, he gestures toward them, and to my sister Lindsay, who, well, showed up tonight. Laughter follows, sharp and uncomfortable. My father chuckles loudly. My mother smiles tightly while patting my hand in consolation. This is the moment I've been waiting for, the casual dismissal, the public reminder of my place in the family hierarchy. Actually, Brad, I say, my voice cutting through the laughter, I'd like to say a few words, if I may. Surprise flickers across his face, quickly masked with fraternal indulgence. Of course, sis. Come on up here. The short walk to the stage feels like crossing a boundary I can never uncross. Rachel catches my eye, giving an almost imperceptible nod. My parents look confused, my father already preparing to be embarrassed by whatever his failing daughter might say. I take the microphone, my voice steadier than I expected.
Thank you, Brad.
That was quite a speech. I scan the crowd, noting the polite attention tinged with curiosity. For those who don't know me, I'm Lindsay Maddox, Brad's older sister. The family's best-kept secret, Brad jokes, generating another ripple of laughter. I let it wash over me, no longer stinging. Actually, that's truer than you know. I continue. My brother just thanked his mysterious investor, and I think it's time that investor was properly introduced. I open my folder, removing the first document. 6 months ago, Next Trend Technologies wasn't facing a critical moment. It was 72 hours from complete financial collapse due to mismanagement and excessive spending. The room goes utterly silent. Brad's smile freezes in place. The company had burned through its seed funding and initial revenue on unnecessary luxuries and executive compensation disproportionate to its income. I hold up the financial statements, though I don't need to reference them. I know every number by heart. When Maddox Holdings stepped in with investment capital, it wasn't because they recognized Brad's vision. It was because they saw potential in the core technology developed by Aiden Chun and his team, despite the leadership issues. Brad steps toward me, his voice low. What are you doing? How would you know any of this? I meet his gaze directly. Because, Brad, I am Maddox Holdings. The words land like a physical blow. Brad staggers back, his face draining of color. Murmurs erupt throughout the room. My mother gasps audibly. That's not. You can't. Brad stutters, but I continue, my voice clear and carrying. After college, while everyone thought I was struggling with freelance work, I was building an investment portfolio that now manages assets worth over $40 million. I turned to face the crowd. Maddox Holdings, named after our grandmother, has invested in 17 startups over the past 5 years, with a success rate triple the industry average. I extract another document, the investment agreement with Brad's signature. Next Trend was the only investment I ever made anonymously, because I knew the founder would never accept my help if he knew who was offering it. My father pushes forward. This is absurd. Lindsay, if this is some kind of joke. It's not a joke, Dad. I hand him the certified financial statements of my company. You've been giving me an allowance I haven't needed for years, while I've been keeping your son's company afloat. As my parents stare at the documents in shock, I turn back to Brad, whose expression has shifted from disbelief to dawning horror as he begins to comprehend the full implications. I own 40% of your company, Brad. I've vetoed your yacht leases, your executive retreats, and your attempts to dilute your technical team's equity. I've attended every board meeting for 6 months, watching you take credit for other people's innovations while spending money you hadn't earned. The silence in the room is absolute. Every eye is fixed on us. The golden child and the afterthought roles suddenly, dramatically reversed. Why? Brad finally manages. Why would you do this? Why reveal it now like this? I step closer, lowering my voice so only he can hear.
Because you needed to see me, Brad.
Really see me, for once in our lives. Then louder for everyone. I think it's time we discussed NextRen's future leadership. 3 weeks after the engagement party, I sit in NextRen's newly downsized conference room. The extravagant office Brad had leased has been replaced by a practical space that costs a third as much, but actually meets our needs. Around the table sit the key players in the company's future. Aiden Chen, now officially recognized as Chief Technology Officer. Rachel, whose corporate psychology background earned her the role of Head of People and Culture. Maya, representing L. Maddox Holdings interests, and Brad, looking uncharacteristically subdued in a simple button-down shirt rather than his usual designer suits. The restructuring is proceeding on schedule, Maya reports, sliding financial projections across the table. With the reduced overhead and refocused marketing strategy, we're projecting profitability by Q3. Brad stares at the numbers, his expression unreadable. In the aftermath of my revelation, he'd cycled through predictable stages: shock, denial, anger, and finally, a reluctant acceptance when faced with the irrefutable reality of his situation. The transition hasn't been easy for any of us. The technical team appreciates the new equity distribution, Aiden adds. Morale is up and we've actually decreased turnover by 60%. I nod, remembering the late nights reconfiguring the company's compensation structure to properly reward the people actually creating value. And the new client acquisition numbers? Better than expected, Rachel says. Turns out when you deliver solid results instead of just promises, word spreads. As the meeting concludes, I ask Brad to stay behind. When the door closes, leaving us alone, the weight of our shared history hangs between us. You're doing better than I expected, I tell him and mean it. The sales team responds well to your leadership when you're focused on actual results instead of appearances. He laughs without humor. Is that your version of a compliment? It's my version of the truth. I gather my papers, watching him carefully. The truth has been in short supply in our family. Brad runs a hand through his hair, shorter now, less perfectly styled. Mom and Dad still can't look me in the eye. Dad keeps asking how I never knew about your company. Mom cried for 3 days. They'll adjust. I keep my voice neutral, though the memory of my mother's shocked face still stings. The day after the party, she called me, alternating between tearful apologies and bewildered questions about how I'd hidden my success for so long. That's the thing, Linz. Brad leans forward. I'm not sure I want them to adjust. I'm not sure I want to go back to being their golden child. It was exhausting.
This surprises me.
You seem to enjoy it. I enjoyed the perks, he admits. The praise, the money, the constant validation. But I was always one failure away from losing their approval. Do you know how terrifying that is? For the first time, I glimpsed something genuine in my brother. The insecurity beneath the bravado, the desperate need to maintain the facade of success at any cost. I never wanted to destroy you, Brad. I say quietly. I just needed to be seen. Well, mission accomplished. He attempts a smile. Everyone sees you now. Lindsay Maddox, financial prodigy. Meanwhile, I'm the family laughingstock. You're still NextRen's face to clients. That wasn't charity. You have genuine talent there. You just can't be trusted with the checkbook. He winces, but doesn't argue. Progress. Outside the conference room, Rachel waits. Her engagement ring is conspicuously absent, has been since the night of the party. When I raise an eyebrow, she shakes her head slightly. We're working through things, taking a step back to reevaluate. I never meant to come between you, I tell her as we walk out together. You didn't, she assures me. You just showed me who I was really engaged to. Now I get to decide if that's still the person I want to marry. She smiles ruefully. At least now I'm making an informed decision. At the elevator, my phone buzzes with a text from my father. Dinner on Sunday? Just the 4 of us. Please. It's the 3rd such invitation. I've declined the previous 2, Needing space to process 28 years of family dynamics suddenly turned upside down. But maybe it's time. I'll be there, I reply, adding, I'll bring the wine. Outside, the afternoon sun bathes the city in golden light. I dismiss my driver and decide to walk, enjoying the simple pleasure of movement, of taking up space in the world unapologetically. My phone rings, Maya, with updates on 2 other investments that need my attention. Before answering, I pause to appreciate the moment, standing on my own terms, seen for who I truly am, no longer defined by others' limited perceptions. The silent investor has found her voice. The journey ahead won't be simple. My relationship with Brad requires careful rebuilding, if it can be rebuilt at all. My parents are struggling to reconcile their daughter, the failure, with a financial success they never noticed. The company still faces challenges that will test our new leadership structure. But for the first time, I'm approaching these challenges from a position of acknowledged strength. No more hiding, no more diminishing myself to fit into the role assigned to me. As I answer Maya's call and continue walking, I reflect on how the truth, finally spoken, has set so many things in motion. Family myths exposed. Power dynamics shattered. New possibilities emerging from the ruins of old assumptions. I am Lindsay Maddox, founder of L. Maddox Holdings. I am my brother's investor, my parents' revelation, my own creation, and I am, at last, exactly where I belong.